I want to talk about the two sides of asking for help. On the one hand, you have the person who is asking for help. And for you, I want to shed some light on things to consider and explore to help you get to a point where you make the ask. And then I want to talk to the person on the receiving end of being asked. Okay, and I want to talk about some things to consider in terms of how you show up and how to help make it a little bit easier for someone to ask. So here's the deal. This is for those who are struggling to ask people for help. And this is also for the person who is on the end of wanting to help others. And you're like, I'm just here. Ask me. I'm willing. Now, the funny thing is that the same person who is too scared to ask for help is typically in high situations, over 80%, is typically the person who is willing to help though. Why is that? Well, it's because the person who struggles to ask for help knows the difficulty and they want to minimize that hardship for others. And so they consistently put themselves out there. But it's scary to trust. And so they do too much, hoping that subconsciously someone will just see them, show up and do for them. That's a whole other video. Scroll through my content because I have some stuff where I talk about that. But in this one, this is two things to consider for the person asking and for the person ready to give, right? And like I said, it's typically the same person. When you think about asking for help and you get that knot in your chest and you're just like, absolutely not, I am not asking. I want you to really think about what you're holding yourself back from. I want you to think about all the things that come to your mind when you think about having to ask. What are the negative self-talk? What are the negative thoughts coming to mind? Is it something like, oh, they might not. They're not going to do it. No, I'm going to feel needy. I really can do this. Maybe I should just ask for 20% of what I want and I'll do the other 80. I know I'm struggling with it, but if I get a little something, I'm going to keep my expectations low, right? If you're honest with yourself, if anything that I just said sounds familiar to you, sounds like the anxiety driving thoughts that go through your mind when you think about asking for help, then I want you to hold those things in place. And then one by one, start thinking to yourself, holding on to this thought, what is it keeping you away from? How much easier would your life be or the situation be if you were to push past those thoughts that have yet to be proven true, right? And I mean this, even if someone has done that to you in the past outcomes do not guarantee future performance. And this is true, okay? That is absolutely true. You cannot 100% with certainty predict future outcomes based on past situations. Now, I'm not saying go back to the same person who's disappointed you 80 million times. However, there is a point at which I'm going to want to talk more about how we misjudge and mislabel people, thinking that they never show up for us. It's really in the way that we ask, but that's a different video. I want you to really think about how to try again, because there is so much that you stand to gain by getting help. You stand to gain a broader network of loved ones, of friends, of supporters. You stand to gain some peace. You get to maintain some of your energy. You're not burning yourself out. And you're internally saying to yourself, you're worth it. You are worth it. You're the first person that can dictate your worth. You are the first person who owns your worth. Honestly, you're the only person. You're the only person who can really determine what your worth is. And the more that you step up and ask for help, the more that you step up and do the things that you're scared to do, the more you tell yourself that you're worth it, and you expand that muscle and you begin to believe it more and more, because you're programming your brain to see and believe and understand something differently than what your old programming is. And your old programming is the things that I rattled off in the beginning of this segment. Now, there's so many different things that I left out in that. So what I want you to do for the person asking for help, I want you to take just the first piece of what I started with, listen to it, come back to the comments, ask some questions that stand out, and then I can make smaller videos breaking down different parts of this. But what I gave you is sufficient enough to get you started, because what I gave you is the tips to explore what's really holding you back. I've given you the tips to acknowledge what's happening for you, and then to reflect on what it's keeping you from, and then use that as fuel to push you forward towards the ask. Now, for the person on the receiving end of the request, I want us to think about this piece for a minute. When you tell people, if you need me, I'm here for you, or if you want something, just ask me, make sure that you mean that. Because what can happen is that we will say these things, and then when a person shows up and they ask us, we don't seem that welcoming. We create an atmosphere that makes people feel like they're indebted to us. And if you are there to help someone, it's not that they owe you something. Unless you make this transactional, then that's a whole different story. If you say, hey, I'm going to help you and you're going to pay me this, or hey, I'm going to help you in exchange for fill in the blank, then that's a transactional thing. That's different. But if you are genuinely saying that, hey, I'm just here to help you, and you don't put stipulations on it, then be mindful of how you show up when the person does ask you for help. Check yourself, because understand that most times asking wasn't easy. And so in the back of your mind, here's what I want you to hold space for and to consider. When someone asks you for help, assume that it wasn't easy for them to do. And if you say yes, right? Because you don't have to say yes. If you say yes, before you utter the words yes out your mouth, consider this. Am I going to be resenting of anything after I do this? Do I expect anything in return from this person before I do this? Do I think I'll expect something in return later on? Will I feel good doing this? And is that feeling of good, me feeling good, is that sufficient enough to have me not expect anything? That's one part, right? This is checking yourself before you say the yes. The other thing to keep in mind is that, going off the same assumption, assuming that the ask wasn't easy, right? Assuming that the ask wasn't easy, holding space for that. I also want you to start getting into a space where, you help people along the way. Like, think about at this point, we've all come across videos where they talk about check on your strong friends, right? And that's typically because the strong friends, like I said, one and the same often. The ones that don't ask for help but are always giving help, right? The strong friends. And so this person is probably burnt out and exhausted. And so they may not know how to ask for help. They're feeling all of those things, but even the thought of figuring out how to open their mouths and say, can you help me with this, feels like a task unto itself. And sometimes that can cause people not to want to ask because it's just too much to even think about, well, what parts am I going to ask for help with? And what if they say no? And how do I know I can trust them? All of those things are draining, and it's scary. It's scary to think about trusting someone to show up for you when you have a request that you need fulfilled. So as a person on the receiving end of the ask, here's what I want you to consider doing. I want you to consider, next time you tell somebody, hey, if you need something, I'm here for you, go a little bit deeper and ask them, what would make it a little bit easier for you to come to me? If this is someone that you know well, hey, I see you running around, I see you doing a lot. What do you need to feel secure enough to ask me for help? What would you need? Is there a point at which, if I see you doing something, or if I see you looking overwhelmed or like fill in the blanks, that you want me to step in and say, hey, I'll take over this for you? Tell me how I can best support you so that you know that I'm here for you. That goes a long way, because it starts to let the person know that you meant what you said and that you're willing to help them. And I don't mean just ask the question and then not do it. If you do not feel that this is something you can do, if you feel that you would do this and end up being resentful, then don't do it. Now, in terms of resent, that's a whole different video that I want to talk about, because some of us are going to watch this video and try to implement some of the things and still feel resentful at the end, and then feel like, we're resentful because people took advantage of us. That's a whole separate video unto itself, because what that really is a reflection of is you not really doing internal inventory of why you even chose to help in the first place. And I'm not blaming you, but one thing I'm about in my coaching practice is being honest with ourselves, exploring what's truly in our hearts and minds that are blocking us from being the people that we desire to be and living the life that we desire to live. You can be a helpful, supportive person and not be a doormat. You can also be a helpful and supportive person and have boundaries and receive help. But the things that I'm suggesting to you as a starting point in this video are things that are going to help you become more self-aware of what goes on for you. A lot of us want to be helpful. A lot of us believe that we're empathetic. And to some degree, that's true. But like everything, there's levels to this. And so if you're watching this video and you haven't tried the things that I'm talking about, put it to the test for yourself. And then I want you to come back and let me know in the comments how this played out for you. What did you learn about yourself? How did it feel for you to try these things? How did your relationships improve after trying these things? Drop also the questions that you have in the comments of this video, because like I said, just like for the first part, I'm gonna make some more content around this subject for the first part, and I want to do some more content around this for the second part. Okay, so drop it in there. This content is free. Okay, so if I had a coaching client and we were working on this one-on-one, of course it would be very unique and tailored to them. But the beautiful thing about this video is that you get to watch it, break it apart for yourself, test it out, try it, then circle back, ask me some questions, and I'm going to create some stuff for you and so many others to see, learn, and grow from. In the meantime, check out my website, about to say my Instagram handle. Check out my website, thekeynsg.com. And on my website, you'll find my Instagram page and all the other YouTube pages and yada, yada, yada. Tell a friend to tell a friend, and check out my other content on this platform that you're watching this video on. Stay tuned for more. In the meantime, y'all, never stop growing. Bye, y'all.